things as being disorders like alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder, even some of the stuff that is kind of on the fringes of it that definitely still exists is like gambling disorder and stuff. But even outside of all of that, the overall question behind all of them is like, what's our relationship to it, and how much of a factor is it become in our lives? How much is it impacting these other areas? So, being able to recognize that I've got an unhealthy relationship with anything is an important aspect of all of this.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, I was surprised to hear about the gambling. I didn't really think about that too much till I started working here, and there's definitely a percentage of our participants that have a gambling issue or a co-occurring gambling disorder, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah. Hey, really quick, Chris, can you share a little bit about your story, like how you first got involved with drugs, like what age and how that kind of progressed and you know.
sure.
Yeah.
So, my story started off with drinking. The first time I ever had a drink, I was freshman in high school. Can't remember exactly what age that is, but my brother took me out to this party, and somebody just handed me a handle of vodka and said, "Here, have some." And
Right.
ended up taking a couple of shots, and that was also the first night that I ever successfully spoke with a girl. And I really internalized that lesson of, oh, drinking makes it easier to talk to women.
Yep.
Not a great lesson to learn. Uh, it really escalated as I got older, and particularly in college, that got very much on the other end of like, it was very bad. That I ended up dropping out of college when I was 22 ish. Had been doing a ton of other stuff. Done most everything under the sun. The only thing that was really on the outside for me is I never did opiates, but most everything else out there I've experimented with, tried, and all that. And after I dropped out of school, I got invited out to go live in the like Christiansburg area for a little while and Blacksburg, and was living down there and partying and not really doing anything for a bit. And eventually it got to the place where I ended up getting sick and I had to like go to the hospital. I ended up almost dying because I had stopped eating for like a month. I was drinking just nonstop. And when I got hospitalized for that, I had to move back in with the parents afterwards, which was not enough to keep me sober. I was still refusing to go to any meetings and anything like that. Didn't want to do anything about it. Uh, Fast forward another like year or two, and I end up getting kicked out of the parents' house. I get a place down in Forest Hill, and it took me all of about 3 weeks to actually wind up in the hospital again. Same issue. The thing that kind of changed and the kicker for me at that point was when I was hospitalized in Blacksburg, that was during spring break. Everybody was out of town.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so much hurt that nobody came to visit me, but the second time I was in the middle of Richmond surrounded by like every person I knew within 10 miles. Grand total of one person
Right.
outside the family came to visit me. And that really was just like that wake up call of no, I need to do something different. I've either A, chosen to associate just with people who don't care about me, or B, I've pushed away everybody who does. And the answer was C, both.
Right.
So that's when I started getting help and went to an IOP, did a bunch of meetings and a ton of that stuff.
What do you think helped you the most to get past that first hurdle, to really stop, to really stay stopped?
Well, I tell people when I first started going to meetings, I was nervous, but what kind of picked up very quickly was a sense that if I didn't come back next week, I would be missed. That people actually cared about me. They would notice if I wasn't around and had a genuine desire to see me do well. And that was something that I just had not felt in years.
Right.
So that idea of like sometimes the most important thing we can do at a meeting is just say hi to somebody on the way in. That's 100% in my playbook.
That's
So,
a good point. Yeah. So what is your path of recovery like currently right now?
so I do still attend different meetings. Want to be mindful of traditions and stuff like
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
But I also, outside of like the traditional meeting format, I also run some of these things that aren't necessarily always talked about. I am currently the longest running smart recovery facilitator in Virginia. that I've been running a smart recovery meeting for about 7 years. There are facilitators that have been doing it longer, but not consistently, and we get a lot of other just stuff. But
Yeah, that's awesome. The smart recovery is one of the things that helped me get started, and you were the facilitator, so
mm,
it's really
Smart recovery. What does that stand for? It's
stands for self management and recovery training. Which any English majors listening probably just got triggered by capitalizing an and,
right.
but yeah,
mm,
It works.
yeah.
okay. Um, so did you feel that sense of like belonging somewhere, like people are going to miss you, or like people showing a general interest in your well-being? Like, how was that instant, or how did you how did that happen? Like, how did you know?
I think that it just kind of like develops somewhat over time, but not over a long period of time. That I know I was still nervous probably the first few weeks, but when I got to know people and I really got to like understand who other people were and it stopped being a like compare out but compare
Mm,
in type thought process, I think that's what really has helped me develop a lot of that connection. And it didn't hurt that it was also other people were being proactive about it because I tend to be more of an isolationist. I like, well, withdraw. I'll be the guy that stands in the corner the entire time. So having people that are more on the side of like reaching out to you, that ends up meaning a lot to me because it showcases that I have been like seen, noticed.
mm.
Yeah. So you run a smart recovery meeting here at McShin, right?
Not officially affiliated with McShin, but it is at the building.
In the
Yeah,
facility.
Mm.
Yeah.
that I started running the meeting here. I think 2019. It was pre-pandemic. It would have been like 2018, 2019, somewhere around that time. And yeah, we've been running it consistently Friday nights at 6 and getting a good crowd. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have like different pathways represented in the
hmm
community. Helps a lot of people, I'm sure. So
yeah.
Um, do you still so do you do you want to talk a little bit about tomorrow? Or is that not okay? Do you want to?
No, I'm game.
Okay, so tomorrow you're gonna have 10 years, right?
Yep.
Congratulations.
yeah,
That's a long time.
that's incredible actually.
How do you like deal with triggers and temptations if you have them? Do you still have triggers or temptations? Like, is there certain times, like even after 10 years, where you're just like, a drink sounds good, but how do you do that? Like,
From time to time, things will kind of pop up. Going back in time and remembering, I like my drink of choice was always vodka. And I kind of picked up a lesson along the way because I used to work at a like cash control at King's Dominion, where we did all the like making sure that money was taken care of, counted, and all that stuff. And money is the most disgusting thing on earth. So a lot of hand sanitizer everywhere.
mm,
What does cheap hand sanitizer smell like?
alcohol,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like vodka.
Yeah.
So like when everybody was like walking into COVID and like hand sanitizer everywhere, I was fully aware what was about to
Yeah.
happen to a lot of people. And occasionally I'll get like that hit where suddenly you get that smell that comes
Mm,
at you, and there's not really much you can do to prevent that, particularly if you're like surrounded by hand sanitizer all the time. But I kind of embraced two different layers here that triggers I do approach and recognize like what are the ones that I can avoid, but also acknowledging that there are plenty that I won't be able to avoid, not in totality. And even the best plan has holes. So, in addition to the concept on triggers, I also explored the idea of what warning signs really are to me. And to me, warning signs are the idea of like, what's the trigger for the trigger? Why am I already in a bad spot that's making me more susceptible to this? That I don't know about y'all, but have you ever been in like a situation where you've been presented with one of your triggers and you got triggered? And also another situation where you're presented with it and you weren't. So there's inherently something else going on here too. And that's where you get to that like, what are the warning signs? What's the underlying stuff that's putting me in a bad position? And the kind of classics on that one is the halt: hungry, angry,
mm,
lonely, tired. That I used to run an IOP down in Chesterfield, and the place where we ran that was across the street from an Arby's. And we would run the group. It was 6 to 9 o'clock, and people would drive here immediately after work. So I kind of imagined that most of these people that were there probably hadn't eaten since noon because they had to drive a half hour to get here, get into group, and then they weren't going to go on break until like 8 o'clock. So a lot of them might not have eaten in about 8 hours. So whenever we went on break, I knew I was not going to see somebody back on time because they were going to step outside, smell a bacon cheddar Swiss, go get them a sandwich.
Mm.
Trigger is the smell of the bacon cheddar Swiss.
Yeah.
Warning sign is the fact they were hungry. So I had to recognize that it's not just about the trigger side of things. It's what am I doing to make sure that I'm in a good spot ahead of time? Because if I can't hold off all of the potential outcomes and all the potential like things around me, I can at least try to make sure I'm in a good place to deal with if it does crop up. So regular meals, trying to regularly sleep, continuing to go out and talk about everything that's going on with me to try and deal with that loneliness and that anger because I do still have those things. They crop up from time to time. And a lot more of my focus isn't so much on the like, oh my God, I think I just wanted a drink. Let me address this. It's the, oh man, I'm feeling really like off key right now. I feel like I'm really angry. I need to do something about that. So I've migrated back to the like, how do I nip this in the bud before it gets to that level?
Mm.
So self-awareness,
Yeah.
big time.
Do you? So you just don't get, you don't let yourself get into like to the point where like you're obsessing on a thought or obsessing on a drink.
Generally, not the obsessing on a drink one. That doesn't come up that often, but the obsessing on a thought, I think we all kind of have those
Yeah,
from
yeah,
time to
yeah,
time.
yeah. I
So,
meant, yeah, drink, like, because that's the biggest part. I feel like for me that's changed this time around is the obsession to use drugs and alcohol like has been lifted, and that's made all the difference this time around. But I can feel how me thinking about certain drugs or how I used to use them um, can lead me into obsessive thoughts about them, and that's when I'm in trouble.
mm,
Because usually once I start obsessing about it, then I'm like, I gotta like take care of it, you know?
It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
yeah.
So you just don't let yourself get that far.
I can see that conceptually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Did that
It's a
take
good way to do it.
training?
That's a great way to do it, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the best way. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have to train yourself to like
Yeah. In the
recognize it?
beginning, like your first couple years, like it must have been a lot harder.
I know that I had times where I got very stressed out that, like in particular, that remember again, the reason that I like really internalized things early on was the idea of like drinking makes it easier to talk to girls.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I really kind of I had difficulty during that first year with that general thing of like no dating in the first year,
Mm.
that kind of like wisdom. And I tell people like I made it to 11 months, not for lack of trying, without getting into a relationship. And that was the closest I ever came to relapsing because it got me completely spun. That a lot of the other times I was able to keep talking about things kind of early, and even when I was having thoughts of drinking and stuff like that, I'd go and tell somebody that I'd be able to offload that. But it's when I started getting into like the embarrassing stuff that was really hitting me in that feels of like, am I worthwhile as a guy? Is there some type of like connection piece here? And ended up getting into a really not great relationship around that time. And when that kind of disappeared on me a week before my first anniversary, I got into a very dark place.
Mm.
And it was only when I finally was able to actually tell somebody what was going on and they were able to kind of like walk me through it. I think that was the part that really did it. That it's the old style of sunlight's the best disinfectant. We got to talk about it. That the more we ignore something, the less it goes away. So
Yeah. In
So
your
you actually did wait the whole year.
made it 11 months.
Yeah, there you go.
close enough. Yeah.
And then how did you deal with that? Like, because using alcohol as a like a social thing. Um, how did you learn how to talk to women? I guess, or like, how did you do that, or talk to? Yeah.
I think a lot of it just comes down to practice.
Mm.
That we, as humans, we get better at everything the more that we do it. That there's very few people that will just like wake up one day and suddenly they have the ability to do something.
Mm.
Like there's usually some type of progression that has to happen. There's required practice. And for me, the idea of going out to different places and being able to say what's going on with me, getting vulnerable, putting that stuff out there, that level of vulnerability is what helped me get a bit over that hump where, it's okay for me to put myself out there, to risk shame, risk guilt for the promise of something more.
Mm.
And being in the habit and practice of doing that and all the positive and like feedback I was getting from the people that were very welcoming and everything else, that's what really, I think, helped me get better at just doing that. So uh wouldn't say that I'm a Casanova or anything, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know, like for myself, like I just got a year, so and I actually have waited this whole time, like I didn't, so two things I did perfect. I didn't use, and I didn't get into a relationship, or but I guess, yeah, I'm gonna try that out. I guess repetition and just putting myself out there and seeing what happens.
Gotta keep at it.
It gets
Yeah.
easier as you do it. The more you do it, it makes sense.
Yeah, every time it gets a little easier.
and I always try to like reframe that thing because it's the same idea or like thought process of when we say like the thinking of drinking starts to go away or what have you. It's not that things get easier, we get stronger.
Mm,
That's a good point.
It's kind of that same idea. Like if you ever hear the phone weighs 500 pounds, phone's always going to weigh 500 pounds. You do reps,
mm.
you're
Nice.
building that muscle to get it easier to do. So
That's a good one. Yeah.
Repetition.
So you've seen like hundreds of people come into recovery now and seen the outcomes. Do you start to be able to see like the warning signs in people in that early stage when you think they're probably going to go back? And what would those be?
so there's a number of different things that can crop up that I do I do recognize certain like red flags that if somebody is saying that they're like adopting some type of magical thinking, which is just, no, it's going to be fine, I don't have to do anything. That if I've got somebody at work, say, who's about to finish their residential program, they're about to head back out into the world, they're about to leave the bubble, and they don't want to put a plan together because it's okay, I made a decision, I'm not drinking anymore, that's all I need to do. That to me is the like I hear the arrogance that comes in with that
Yeah.
of I just don't need to, nothing applies to me. And it's not 100% accurate because some people have done that where it is just the like I made a decision and now I'm never going to drink again type thing. I've seen that happen too. But the carry off that I also see with that is those people aren't always the happiest when I run into them later.
Yeah.
The end game here isn't die sober. That if you if you play that part out like that's the end goal, then you really limit what your capabilities and what you want out of life is. That what to me it's not so much like what's the red flag, it's the what's the good sign. And for me, when I see someone who shifts from the I don't want to die mindset to the I want to live mindset, when they're kind of focusing on that idea that's not what they're running from, it's what they're running to, those are the ones that I think are going to do a lot better because they have something that they're looking to get out of this. And life is meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because,
That's key.
yeah,
That's key. Otherwise, what's the point in the first place?
yeah,
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. Like, because for a long time, like I was in that position where, like, I didn't care if I lived or died, really. Like, and I was using, like, I didn't. And even when I first, got into treatment and was going through that, I still didn't care if I lived or died, really. But like somewhere along the line, a few months ago, maybe like I don't know, like 6 months ago, I started to catch myself being more careful with um, the way I do things, because I actually gave a shit now, like what happens to me, which that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
that, and I see that, like, why that is something that you'd want to spot in somebody, that like to see how they're doing.
yeah.
Protect that investment that you got.
Yeah.
And a fun game for you the next time you wind up at a like gratitude meeting where everybody's saying everything they're grateful for.
Yeah.
See how many people are like, what's the split there of people that are grateful for something that is happening versus grateful for something that's not happening. That I remember going out to a meeting once that was the kind of topic, and we had like somebody says, "I'm grateful I'm not in jail. I'm grateful I'm not starving. I'm grateful I'm not this," and it comes to me, and I'm kind of me. So I said, "I am grateful I am not currently on fire." Like, it's a positive, but it's also setting my bar all the way down here.
Yeah,
That
you got nowhere else to go.
yeah, but true gratitude is starting to see like what's the benefit aspect here. If you're
Mm.
grateful you're not in jail, well, why? What's so bad about jail? And then people start talking. They're like, "Oh, it inherently limits my freedom." I'm like, okay, so you're grateful for your freedom. So what do you do with your freedom? They're like, "I sit at home and just watch TV all day." I'm like, okay, so you're not actually doing anything with it. That's when you start shifting into like, what's the positive orientation here, and how do you start living in accordance with these things that you're grateful for? Because gratitude's a verb.
That's for sure. That's a good way to look at it. Definitely, it seems like involvement is key, like not just sobriety. Like,
Oh yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it is not just sobriety. I mean, if it was just sobriety, man, like that'd be miserable, really.
it really would.
Yeah.
It really would.
And it takes time. It does take time. Like John, always says this, like just stay in position and wait for that hit. Because it will come, and if you're not in position and ready for it, you're gonna miss it. And that's something that I really try to tell people that are newer than I am is just sit tight and like be patient, like because it will come. Like your life is gonna get better, and it's gonna be worth it. Like as much as I you know hated people telling me that shit, like I don't want to hear that. Like I want it better now, like
Now, today.
but things do get better. Like it's just not possible if you do the right things, and like even if you have some bad shit happen to you, you're still going to be better off, and like you'll be able to deal with it. You'll be stronger, you know. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always think about using because things are bad is like your hair's on fire, then you hit yourself in the face with a hammer a couple times, and see if it makes it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your head hurts and it's cracked, and your head's still on fire. So
Knock yourself out so you can't feel it. I
yeah,
guess it works.
that could work. That could. It's different.
So what's life look like for you today now? What do you
So today I work full time as a substance abuse counselor. I run meetings in my off time and attend some as well, just to like make sure that I'm taking care of myself at the same time. Every month, I've gotten into the habit of just inviting some guys over to not do like meeting stuff, but like we get together and we watch the WrestleMania pay per view stuff. Just
Mm.
because that's one of the other aspects here. It's like I think sometimes that gets lost in this notion of like, oh well, we're in recovery, so if I'm hanging out with somebody else who's in recovery, we have to be talking recovery. Like
It has to be
Yeah,
serious all
definitely
the
not.
time. Yeah.
it's like no, I have the space to just get together and have a massive debate over who's better, Undertaker or Triple H.
That's important. And that's
Yeah.
that one thing that I really want to tell anybody who's listening, especially people new in recovery, that like recovery, yeah, it's a serious thing, and it's you really got to take it seriously. But we also have fun in recovery. And if we didn't, really, like, what would be the point? Like, we do this to live a better life and a more fulfilling life, right? And that's one thing that I like to do with this podcast is to start talking about recovery, and but if it branches off into something else, like we start talking about aliens and shit like that, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know,
I am too.
so
Well,
real or not, aliens?
There's
I,
definitely a possibility.
it's more than possibility that we have actually found alien life on Mars, but we're talking microscopic. So I'm
Mm.
guessing you're talking more on the like, are there?
Intelligent.
Hmm. So in that one, I don't know exactly where I kind of fall on that spectrum. That the idea of the universe is huge. Equally as likely that there are plenty of further advanced aliens that will come to meet us. There does also exist the capability and possibility that at some point we meet them.
Yeah.
That it's kind of the what's the old thing? We do not have the data to freak out about it yet.
Mm.
Exactly.
So,
There's definitely whispers of
which also, if aliens showed up with interstellar travel, we're kind of screwed anyways. So,
Yeah.
don't dwell on it.
oh yeah.
I mean, I'd like to be here for that.
me too.
Yeah.
It would be interesting.
Hope they come in peace.
Ancient aliens,
Very
pyramids,
possible. Very
Egypt.
possible. Very possible. Human history is just like what we know of. I know that's 5,000 years. That's like 0.00% of Earth's history. So there's no
Yeah.
telling what's happened before us or after us.
I remember reading a research paper on this topic once where they were trying to do the like what are the alternate explorations and understanding aspects, like what is it, Stonehenge. We thought there was no way that people could actually do that, and it wasn't until an engineer came up with the like, well, these are the tools on hand, how do you do it? And it's not a like pulley system, it's you build the like grass up and then you slide the thing up on top. And it kind of gets to this notion of like not giving our ancestors potentially the credit they deserve for doing something absurdly complicated and difficult.
Right.
That it's also that same deal of like there does sometimes get brought in this notion of like, well, why do we think Stonehenge could have been created by humans? But then we're going to point to something like Angkor Wat and say that couldn't have. That is there some other type of bias that we might be pulling in on that one? So I generally stay away from the like ancient alien theory because I'm more of the like I kind of prefer to live in that idea of mankind is really freaking amazing. We just need to be able to like see our capabilities and go for it.
Yeah, and define alien too, because I've heard that spores can survive deep space. So we may have all come from that anyway.
Yeah. So so what's like what do you do, like we were talking a little bit about this before the podcast, what do you do for fun for besides watch WrestleMania?
I do also play video games. I know I'm kind of like default guy, movies, video games, wrestling. But outside of that, yeah, the movies, the TV stuff. My undergrad was in film, so I make it a point each year to do a number of different movie marathons. Like the Oscar season just started, and Golden Globes was a couple weeks back. And when they start releasing their list of stuff, most everything goes to streaming pretty early now, so it's very easy to get our hands on and watch that stuff. So I'm knocking my way through a lot of the stuff that got nominated.
Anything really good lately that you've watched?
One of them that got me all up in my feels was nominated for Best Animated Picture called, all right, let me enunciate this, Marcel the Shell
Oh,
with
yeah.
Shoes On.
I know that one. Like I haven't seen the movie, but like I've seen the videos on YouTube. That it's hilarious, honestly. Like I loved it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the movie was also like its tone was very much in that same idea of, I think that like there's whimsy and there's joy to be had, but not shying away from the fact that there's this also kind of dark side to life that we have to learn to appreciate, because if it doesn't exist, we don't have the other things. That there's like one scene in that where a grandmother is talking to her child or grandchild, Marcel, and says something like, I can't remember what it is, but Marcel says, I am so worried that things are going to change. And the grandmother just looks at him and just like does the comforting gaze and says, my dear, it's going to, because change is inevitable. And even though we're scared, we have to understand that there's still a beauty in that. And I was like, oh man, a movie about a talking shell just got me up in my feels. All right.
Yeah.
That's intense. Yeah.
It was really good.
What is it out on?
That one's on Apple TV, I think.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna have to check it out.
I was like, I heartily endorse it. I love that movie. There is like, I can't justify why it got nominated for Best Animated Picture, because
It's not animated.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
live action with animated stuff put on it. Like any Avengers or Marvel movie you see has more animation in it than that does. So it's kind of like, but that's also that weird notion of like how we actually define these categories and genres over time. What does constitute animated now, and what have you?
Yeah, we've been using some AI around here lately. It's pretty
We
scary.
have, yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Chat GPT.
Oh,
It's going to
Have
replace
you heard of
us
that?
all.
I've heard of that.
Man, it's crazy. It really is. Like, and they actually, I was just talking to Steve about it earlier. They just did some tests with it and put it through, like, asked it questions, like for like a law. It was like a law degree, and then there was a
Yeah.
medical
Yep.
exam test, and it passed.
And a business one too.
Yeah. And so what this thing is actually it gives you like a little search thing. You could just type in, make me a script for this, and that, and it will do it, and it does it really good. Like it, it's crazy to me,
It almost
honestly. Like it's scary.
it
Yeah.
almost word for word read a script I had previously written yesterday.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
scary.
Yeah.
I may be
And it
AI. I'm
does it
not sure.
quick too. You just put in the question and it like just starts typing it out.
Yeah,
It goes to the mothership, comes back down.
I had a guy that came through treatment maybe 2 years ago that afterwards was coming out to the smart meeting, so I stayed in contact and just chatting with them. And they got really into this idea of there are chatbot type things that are
Mhm.
designed around CBT tools. So it's the idea of like, is there such a thing as a digital counselor? That there are a couple of companies that started doing that like 2 years ago. And he kind of jumped in onto that, said he had kind of mixed results. This is also 2 years ago, so I don't know how far that's really extended past that. But that does kind of raise into question that notion of like, where is that line? Because Steve, you just made that joke. Like, that thing just wrote my script. I'm out
Yeah.
of a job.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Like, where is that limit that we put on the concept of AI before we want to make sure that we're not losing the human touch somewhere in here? Because I think being able to, for lack of a better term, fake empathy is something computers can get to.
Yeah, they're on the way.
So it's a question of like how much you can really buy into it, and is there still value and warrant outside of that?
Yeah, it's going to be a struggle at some point, I think.
Yeah. We're definitely using it here.
Oh yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Good.
So we just hit a little over our time. But is there anything you wanted to add or anything you wanted to say? Do you have any advice you want to give to anyone else out there looking to get in recovery? And
Yeah, from the 10-year standpoint,
yeah.
the milestone.
That I think a big thing for me was, I think we kind of like somebody said it earlier on during the conversation here, but to really highlight this notion that for me, I had to evolve and change my ideas about different concepts over time. And in particular, I was generally always a person that rejected the notion of taking something on faith, that there is science, there's numbers, let's lean on this one. But at a certain point, even science is going to involve faith. That I think you were the one that said it, that art that uh, I want it now.
Mm.
Yeah,
And I can give you all the stats in the world, and I can tell you 100% that, you know what, 10 years from now you're going to be satisfied with your choice. At some point, it's going to be on you to make that leap that says, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to believe him.
Mm.
That facts are only half the story. We also need our emotions and our beliefs to start falling in place with them. And if we're not willing to make that leap, if we're distrusting everything, we're not going to be able to get anything. So, learning to embrace that notion of hope and risk. I remember one of the things I do in my groups at work is I'll pull up, just Google the word vulnerability and see what comes up. It says the state of being open to attack or harm, some variation of that.
Mm.
And I kind of pose the question, is everybody in group okay with that answer? Because it's not incorrect, but it's only telling half the story. Because the other half there is not just open to attack or harm, it's open to growth and connection.
that's right.
And that's just a major piece here. Kind of going back to that idea, like I keep circling back to this one, but talking to girls, that if I want a girlfriend, she's not going to just appear in my like house. If she does, I'm calling someone.
Yeah, seriously,
But
immediately.
I got to get vulnerable. I got to put myself out
Yeah.
there. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So make sure that I put that effort out there and try and get past the fear aspect that is inherent to a lot of these things. Change involves fear, change involves a lot of stuff that we don't particularly enjoy, but it can be worth it on the other end.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm kind of, my little thing right now is things are not what they seem, usually ever.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
That's true.
so if I feel a certain way about a situation or you know, uh, it usually is never what I think it is, which, usually I think the worst. So I gotta, remind myself that all the time. Like, when I do something or when I don't want to do something, or like, uh, if I meet someone new and like before even getting to know them, I have like a feeling about them. I usually tell myself like, look, it's not probably what I think it is. Let me, see what it is. And then it usually turns out great. Like nothing like I thought it would. So that's something that that I'm little trick I'm using right now to help me out with stuff.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Steve, you got anything?
I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Chris, appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, it's great to run to you again. That's on the other side,
Yeah, it's nice seeing you as well, and it's
Excellent.
nice being out here. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Anytime.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.